Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our new Blacklist video, going back and looking at the finer details of Season 1, Episode 5, The Courier. We are currying ourselves to this episode.
I forgot how good this episode was. It's really weird because I've seen this episode a few times and
Yeah.
I keep forgetting how good it is until I watch it, and especially on the back of the STEWMAKER. I mean, that was a lot to live up to. And I mean, the Courier, he is just a creep show.
Yeah, like it's a really strong episode, but it is kind of like you said, where I think because a lot of it just sort of lives in this moment, and we'll get into how there's not as much in terms of season 10 relevance to look at here, but I think with a lot of that in mind, it's easy to overlook it. And I feel like I've overlooked it a number of times over the years, but there are some really interesting moments in here. Like you said, very good Blacklister. I think we had some really good wrestler stuff in this episode.
Yes.
It really makes me wonder, what happened to him?
I know, right? What happened? This first season for Ressler was really good. We really had a lot with him to get to know him. And this episode also. I mean, I know he was like, I said it for the job, but you lying. We'll get into all that.
Well, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. You know, we will be here every single week until the show comes back, which is hopefully going to be really early on in 2023. No date yet.
Yeah, here's hoping. And make sure that you follow us over on Instagram, Matt and Jess TV. We have a bunch of new pictures up over there, so we really hope that you'll go over and take a look and hit that follow button.
All right, so I think the big sort of takeaway that I have from watching this again is mostly the show continuing its own style of kind of like jerking us around and making us wonder, okay, what side is anybody on? What's everybody's motive? I mean, I remember this closing cliffhanger. So, like, this is the part of the episode I remember just the best of Tom seeing the box, seeing what's in there, what's like really confronting Liz about it and being like, we gotta have a talk. And then like, boom, the episode is over. We're all screaming, wondering what's gonna happen.
Yeah, that was the part of this episode that stuck with me as well. And I mean, we had a lot of that sort of throughout the episode too, where it was also helped build Liz and Reddington's relationship, because there's a moment in there where he asks her, you know, what is going on with your husband? What have you found out? And she's honest with him. And there's a moment where he's like, I really appreciate your honesty, because in my line of work, I don't get that very often. This is something that is really special to me to be able to get. And for your troubles, I will give you a reward, which is the unredacted file all about the Angel Hotel.
It's a really interesting moment with Reddington and Liz, and I think it's a great sort of way to look at and unlock their relationship, because I think there are two different forces at play here. I think number one, you've got the idea that, you know, Tom, as we'll later find out, you know, Reddington obviously has a big motive to try to target Tom and go at Tom. And I think that that's a big part of what's going on here. And he wants to ensure that there's closure. But along with that, along with the job, he really does care about Liz. Like, I think he wants her to be happy. He wants her to be okay. I mean, he wants her to feel safe. Like, that's the biggest thing. I think that's how Reddington sort of knows to express love. And that's another reminder of no matter who he is, he has an emotional pull towards this character and a reason to want to make sure she is okay.
Oh, he really cares about her. You see that look on his face when Liz was like, yeah, you know, he told me it was a job interview and he took me out to Boston. We were supposed to have this romantic weekend, but really he killed somebody. That look on Reddington's face where he was so pissed that, you know, Tom put her in that spot and actually brought her out there. It was so well done.
It's so well done. And it's a really good picture into Reddington's head, where I think there is a certain part of, for all the, you know, fanciful nature of this character, Reddington is also a little bit delusional, where he sort of feels like, because I'm here, Liz will be safer, even though he constantly surrounds her with danger. He constantly surrounds her with people who are questionable. And yeah, Tom is also a very questionable human being. Like, there is no denying any of that. But Reddington seems to think all the time that, you know, he is going to be there to make sure that Liz is okay, when Liz had quite a long life without Reddington there, and she managed to make it through that.
Okay, let's talk about that cliffhanger because we sort of saw at the beginning of this episode where Liz was having a nightmare where she confronted Tom about who he was and what's going on. Tom like killed her.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh my goodness, okay, maybe that's not the best approach. But I mean, by the end of this episode, book ended, here we are where Tom's like, okay, listen, obviously something is going on with you. You missed the ultrasound appointment. You're being really weird with me. He's figured a couple things out and he just pulls out that box and is like, we need to talk. I was like, oh no.
It's fascinating to look at this cliffhanger now too, knowing what we do about Liz down the road where, Liz is so afraid in this episode of like getting answers or having a confrontation where she's just afraid Tom is going to kill her. Whereas like season 8 Liz, she just don't care what happens to her anymore. Like she's not having any of these nightmares. Everything is just really just like up close, right in front of you, very confrontational. And yeah, I remember sort of thinking back at this and just thinking immediately after this episode, wow, everything is about to be out in the open. And I know it's more complicated than that, but it's just like, it really felt when watching this for the first time that this show was holding nothing back. Like this is something that I would have imagined they wouldn't have brought up until like the end of season 1.
Yeah, and episode 5, they're already rolling out. That is what the magic of this first season is they were really pulling no punches. They were giving you mystery. They were giving sort of enough answers to keep you interested. Okay, let's talk about Ressler.
Yes.
So Ressler goes undercover pretending he's, the courier and all that. And he ends up saying something during this that I think is true. And we sort of learn a little more about him as time goes on, where he's basically saying that all he has is a job because the one thing he loved in his world, in the whole world, is gone. And this job is his whole life. Later, he's kind of like, I was just playing the role.
Yeah.
I don't believe you.
No, nobody should believe him. He is someone who just got so obsessed with Reddington and so obsessed with like getting the job done that he pushed everything else away. And, I know that there are other cop shows that have shown that sort of character before, but Diego just plays it really, really well. And him pretending to be the courier and, like cutting his own arm, like there was a lot of good, intense stuff with him where you just see in this episode how determined he is, how strong he is as an agent, like the push and pull between him and Liz in Reddington. And I know that there's a lot of really good stuff for him in this season that I hope the writers can just do a little bit of a rewatch of their own here and sort of examine what made this character so good. And to me, a lot of it was that, he knew what it meant to lose something and he lost it pretty recently. And I think because of that, it's such a driving force for him in this first season. He's just like crying out for help.
Yeah, I mean, if what he's saying is true, that he had this one thing in the world that he loved and it's gone, now he's, going into season 10, he has much more than that. He has other coworkers he really cares about that have left. He has Liz, who he loved, who is dead. There is a lot more that's happened to him now, and he's a much more complicated character going into season 10. So I hope that they're not going to just sit on that.
The thing that is weird watching this now is it's like, I think the task force and the presentation of those characters, I know we didn't have Aram as much right now, but the other characters was so much better in season 1 versus, season 8, season 9. But it's like, kind of on the flip side, I feel like Team Reddington is so much more fun in the later seasons than it is early on here, where Dembe is kind of just like a non-factor. We have, this like Newton Phillips schmo who's there and the pilot. He's there early on in this episode. It's just like nobody in Team Reddington is as interesting at the moment.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the couriers. The courier going to show up in season 10? Nah, he dead.
That's a pretty easy discussion to have, though, isn't it? Like this, I think what makes this character work mostly is just sort of the idea of who he is and what he does is creepy and is interesting. I don't know if they'll ever come out and say it, but like, I don't believe in season 1 that they were really predicting that they were going to have a season 10 where they were going to bring back all these blacklisters from the past. If they knew that, I kind of wonder if they would be keeping more of these blacklisters alive.
Yeah, especially someone like the Courier who, we learned can't feel pain, is hiding things in his body. I mean, I don't remember ever seeing a character like this on TV, and I've watched a lot of TV. I'm sure there's something similar, but this is this is something else. And to even give that backstory from the brother who's kind of like, our father used to do these things to him because he couldn't feel pain. Like, he's been through a lot to end up where he is now. You don't always get that, especially on a procedural show, to get to know the background of sort of the villain of the week. They did it really well last time as well with the STEWMAKER, where you got to know some of his background, how he got here.
I think what the show is really doing with this, this particular chunk of season 1 is just showing you, okay, we can do these really creepy, compelling blacklisters of the week. Yep. That way, when we get into sort of the larger characters, the quote-unquote big bads, that you'll be even more invested in them because you know what we're capable of in small doses. And I do think it's really, really effective this early on. And it's one of the reasons why people continue to watch this beyond just the relationships with the characters.
Yeah.
The sad reality is, of course, as we said early on, there's not that much else that's going to be relevant in season 10 from some of this. No. It's this is a good episode to watch if you just love the dynamic with Liz and Tom, if you just love old school Blacklist. But to me, we're still not fully at the sweet spot. We don't have enough Dembe or Aram at this point, but it's a good little window into a couple of different characters.
Absolutely.
All right, well, go ahead, hit that subscribe button so that you guys don't miss any of our other Blacklist rewatch coverage here along the way. There's still a lot coming up.
Yep.
We will see you here next time.